Hey guys, it's Cam from Craft and Tailored, and in this episode of What Is On My Wrist, we're talking about a Heuer Carrera Dato 45. The reference is 3147N, which is the black dial variant of the Dato 45. So I recently have been wearing a lot of watches that are very simple, less is more kind of feeling, purpose-built. And I think that this watch perfectly suits that feeling for me. It's a watch that is kind of newer to me in terms of Carreras and Heuer Carreras. And I think it's a brand that is kind of sleepy right now. I think Heuer 2 or 3 years ago had a lot of attention, and I think the market dropped a little bit on Heuer's because of some things that Tag Heuer was actually doing to inflate the market with the launch of their heritage models. And that's another story for another time. In 1963 specifically, both the Rolex Cosmograph Daytona and the Heuer Carrera were released in the same year to that marketplace. And that marketplace being the automotive marketplace. So the market that required timekeeping in the chronograph type of format to essentially keep track and also record this time. And obviously both watches are named after famous races. Heuer obviously having the Carrera race, and Rolex having the 24 hours of Daytona. So we were talking a little bit about simplistic design, and I think the 3147 range, whether it be a black dial or a silver dial, really encapsulate this perfectly. Heuer in this time period in the early 1960s was wanting to create watches that were, I think, along the lines of less is more. And you can see that within the Carrera lineup for sure. So in most watches, like if you look at like a Submariner 1680 or any of the other Carreras that employ a date, not the first Dato or Heuer to incorporate a date. The first Heuer Carrera to incorporate a date was actually at the 12 o'clock position. The other thing that's really interesting, and this is where the watch gets the name Dato 45, is the minute totalizer here when you're running the chronograph function totalizes the minutes in 45-minute increments instead of 30. So I think that's kind of interesting and also unique. Again, the other thing that's very interesting is it's one big subdial to the right. So where normally you would find a date window, you have this big, white or black, depending on what specific, Dato 45 you're looking at the 3 o'clock position instead of being at the 6 or instead of being at the 9 o'clock position. So it's kind of an interesting watch and kind of gives me like this asymmetric feeling because it's almost unbalanced but yet balanced. It reminds me of like a shot leather jacket, like a motorcycle jacket that has like an asymmetrical zipper. The zipper comes across the body instead of being straight up in the middle, and it shouldn't work, but it does. And that's the thing that I am just gravitating most towards in the Dato 45. This specific example is really interesting too because it is a black dial. I've seen a lot more silver dial 3147s than I have black. I really like the black. The white minute track, which is also two-piece, so it's a separate piece. It's a pie pan style dial, but it's actually, I believe, a separate piece that sits on top of the dial, almost like a retaining ring or a rehaut, paired with the matte black of the dial and the off-white of the subdial in the date window, I think is really, really eye-catching and also very legible. And I think that is ultimately what Heuer was wanting to create within their chronograph timepieces in this era, is something that was just very simple, no nonsense, highly legible, functional. The lugs on this piece are really, really cool. I really like the geometric lugs. This specific reference to me is unpolished. The case is very, very sharp, has really nice bevels, and I think that the Carrera chronograph lineups are all about these nice long lugs and the geometric shape that they possess as opposed to other examples of chronographs from that era. This is a watch that is just about the simple details. Less is more, and I think that the execution, being that it's different, again having the date in the chronograph subregister in a kind of more of a flip-flop fashion, makes this really unique and again kind of cool to me. That's why I'm wearing this watch. That's why I really, really like it. This watch is available for sale on our website. I'll provide a link in the description below. But again, I think that in my personal collecting and in the watches that I'm gravitating more towards, I really like these kind of timepieces that represent a less is more kind of feel. The watch wall on the wrist is really, really nice. The case size is 36 millimeters. The lug width is 18. It pairs perfectly with a rally style strap. And matter of fact, I believe most of them were actually sold on an 18 millimeter leather, style strap. Matter of fact, I think that this watch is not even 36, I think it's 35. It depends on how you want to measure it. There's different ways of measuring timepieces. You can incorporate the crown, you can not incorporate the crown. I typically don't incorporate the crown, and I measure between the lugs on the opposing side. So it's like 35 and a half. So we're splitting hairs. I think it wears, like a 36, but I think the watch just wears really nicely. I feel very stylish when I'm wearing this watch. And I love that it just measures, time in 45 minutes as opposed to 30, and it's just a no frills chronograph that, again, I think sophistication is sometimes found in the most simplest of things, and I think that this watch represents it best. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.